I'm standing here on a stump in Wengwalk State Forest, which we logged approximately 12 months ago, and it's a log about 40 girth. There's plenty more around here like it, but we've had to leave some for future growth. You see all these regrowth trees coming up around it. They're through here everywhere, behind me. They just pop up out of the ground everywhere, and the ones that are strongest will make it and grow on, and the other ones, weaker ones, they might just die off, or they might get thinned out later on as a smaller, weaker tree, a salvage tree or something. The better one will grow into a quota log or a power pole. And it's just hard to believe in 12 months the amount of regrowth it's got coming up through the bush, and the amount of trees that actually get left today, habitat for the animals or the seed regrowth, all the young timber. See all these younger trees here? They were too small to harvest, they've been left, and you come back in 30 or 40 years and they'll be like the one I'm standing on, and you can cut it down. A lot of people refer to these forests as New South Wales native forests, but what they actually should be calling them is New South Wales regrowth forests, because they're just regrowing all the time after we thin them, and then they just keep coming back every 30 or 40 years. You come back for another cut and it just keeps going on and on and on. I'm just up the road a little bit further from where we last were on Wengwalk Forest Way, and this block here is just about ready to be planned to be logged, they tell me. And I just wanted to point out there's a stump here behind me. It's at least 80, 90, 100-year-old. You know, that's a log 60, 70 girth in its day. And then just to the side of it here, only 4 or 5 metres away, we've got one here. You know, it's about a 40-year-old log, and it was a 40 to 50 girth. And there's another one 4 metres away here, a log just in here, and it's 40 to 50 girth, and the bush is just full of them. Everywhere you can see here, there's some younger timber still coming on, but through the back, there's a lot of timber through here, and a lot of good future logs. So this is one of the blue gum trees in the compartment that'll get logged shortly, maybe next year, and it's just amazing. Look at that, I cannot get my arms anywhere near around that. That's a 50 to 60 girth log, and the bush is just full of them. There's thousands here. But this timber grows very fast. It's high rainfall and it's very good soil here, and this bush is known to produce plenty of logs over the last 100, 150 years. Just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Currently a principal research scientist at DPI-RD in a forest science unit. I've been working on wildlife ecology in forests for about 25 years. The past 10 years we've been doing a lot of work on koalas. They're actually quite difficult animals to understand because they're very hard to see. You can go out into the forest and you just don't see them, you don't know that they're there. So we've been developing new methods to try and find out what they're doing. One of those methods is using acoustic recorders that can pick up on male koalas when they're bellowing during the mating season. So we've been able to use that to survey different areas. We've done a lot of habitat mapping for koalas. There's a lot of habitat that's mapped out in those forests. There's about 1.6 million hectares in northeast New South Wales. And I think when we started, it's probably fair to say most people thought koalas didn't occur in a lot of those forests. So we've then gone out, we've surveyed over 220 sites, and we found koalas in a high percentage of those sites, say 60 to 70%, and that's a lot more than what people would have previously thought. So that really does change the picture for the status of koalas in those, particularly those public forests. And yeah, the results blew us away. And now other methods are being applied, like drones with thermal cameras, and they're finding the same things, that koalas are much more common in these forests than we previously thought. We've done this big broad survey across all these 220 odd sites in the northeast, and we found no relationship between whether a site was harvested and whether you would detect koalas. And then we did a more detailed study at a local scale where we actually set up an experiment. We went to sites before they were harvested, tried to estimate how many koalas were there. We came back after it was harvested and looked at the change. And we also had control sites in nearby national parks for a comparison. We actually found no effect of timber harvesting on the koala numbers. So it was quite a detailed study which no one has done before. Those results, as well as the GPS tracking we've done to see how they use the forest after it's been harvested, I think it does tell us that we can balance protecting koalas at the same time as undertaking forestry under the rule set that's in place. So there are regulations set by the EPA I think that, so there are protections in place for the koalas and they seem to be doing a good job. That's what our results are telling us. I think we need to do something about how forests are managed to minimise the effects of those really out of control bushfires. We surveyed after those big black summer fires and we did find a big effect of when you have really bad bushfires in a local area. We saw big drops in koala numbers, which we don't see after timber harvesting.
So I'm Fabiano Ximenez. I'm a senior research scientist with the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. Well, we look at the life cycle of carbon in forestry. So we study how carbon flows from when the forests are harvested through to when the timber is processed in sawmills, up until when the timber is used in houses, and all the way to landfills if products do end up in landfills. So we try to look at it from a life cycle perspective. From a carbon perspective, there is no net benefit in stopping native forest harvest in New South Wales. That's clearly what the science tells us. Forests that are sustainably managed for production achieve better climate outcomes than forests managed for conservation alone. And that's not just us saying this. There are colleagues internationally with similar studies in Canada and other countries where they've achieved similar outcomes. And the IPCC itself, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in numerous reports that they've produced over the years, they acknowledge sustainable forestry management as one of the key tools to combat climate change. What are the possible scenarios if we do stop native forestry? And I guess in a lot of cases, the most likely scenario is that we end up using less timber and therefore more of the products that are more carbon intensive, which is not a great sort of outcome from a greenhouse perspective, or you can end up using logs from overseas or products from overseas, which in a lot of cases come from areas which are not managed the best way possible, so unsustainably managed. And if that leads to deforestation, that's a massive carbon pulse. Active management of native forests or forests in general is the best way we have to achieve tangible, meaningful carbon outcomes. You are removing the carbon from trees that are 50 or 60 years old, for instance, and then you're putting the carbon effectively in a bank of wood products, right? And if a bushfire came and wiped out the forest, so that all of that carbon would have been sort of gone back into the atmosphere. So it's almost like a security policy to say, well, if we're harvesting every so often, at least we're safeguarding some of the carbon and we are letting those trees regrow and then starting the whole process again. From my personal background, I come from Brazil. I did forestry in Brazil, so I understand firsthand how forestry is done in different parts of the world, and I would consider forestry as it is managed in New South Wales as being one of the top ranked countries in the world from a sustainable forest management.
So when you're out here in the bush, it feels so frustrating to think that there's all this timber out here and it's just growing and growing and growing, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of hectares already locked up, and we only left to log a small proportion of that. And down in Sydney, they get to make these decisions that could shut down all these little country towns and all these communities and put thousands of people out of work. And then not only that, what's everyone going to do for timber? We have people from Victoria up here now. They've only been shut for 12 months, and every day Victorians are ringing, chasing timber. So where are we going to get our timber from if you just lock it all up? It just doesn't make sense to me. It is a renewable product. It just needs water and sun, and it grows, and it costs nothing to grow it. Out here when I'm in the forest, I feel like it's just political motivated, and I hope that the government, when they go to make their decisions on the future of the forest, they can listen to the science and rely on the science before they make their decisions.